Have you ever wondered why some people seem unstoppable, while the rest of us struggle to keep pace? Elite people carry secrets, but they're not flashy. They aren't about wealth or fame. They're about choices, habits, and sacrifices so subtle you don't notice them until decades later. Most people chase recognition. Elite people chase mastery. Most people want approval. Elite people learn how to embrace loneliness, discomfort, and reality as it truly is. And that's why you rarely hear them speak about it. They've learned that understanding it too soon can overwhelm those unprepared. This audiobook will take you behind that veil. It's not about making you feel good. It's about helping you see the quiet truths that build lasting success. If you feel that pull to understand more, like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who's ready to rise above the noise. Chapter 1. The Quiet Code. Elite people don't live in a world with more hours. They live in a world with fewer leaks. Most people try to get better by adding more. More hustle, more hacks, more motivation, more information. The elite get better by removing what drains them. They don't announce it. They don't post it. They don't teach it to strangers for free. They guard it the way a boxer guards their chin. Not out of arrogance, but because they know attention is a currency and every unnecessary transaction costs them. Think about the kid who shows up to the basketball court in high school. The loud one, talking about how he's going to dominate, calling his shots, flexing for the crowd. Then there's another kid who barely speaks. He warms up the same way every time. He's early. He does the boring drills. He leaves before the selfies. When the game starts, one of them performs and the other performs a personality. Over time, the gap becomes permanent. The loud kid stays hungry for praise. The quiet kid stays hungry for mastery. That's the first quiet code. Elite people don't build their lives around looking impressive. They build their lives around becoming undeniable. And here's what they never share. The real work is not exciting. It's repetitive. It's unglamorous. It's lonely. The elite don't want applause for it because applause is a trap. Applause turns discipline into performance, and performance turns progress into a stage. A stage requires an audience. An audience requires explanation. Explanation requires energy. Energy is finite. If you've ever had a season where you made serious progress, you already know this. You didn't talk much. You didn't debate your plan with everybody. You didn't ask for permission. You executed. You slept better because your mind wasn't buzzing with other people's opinions. You weren't trying to win conversations. You were trying to win your life. Most people leak power through their mouth. They announce their goals too early and then confuse attention for achievement. They tell friends they're starting a business before they have a customer. They tell people they're getting in shape before they've done a month of training. They talk about their future self while staying loyal to their current habits. The elite don't do that. They keep their mouth closed and their schedule loud. A woman I once met in Los Angeles was running a small operation that looked ordinary from the outside. No flashy branding. No luxury office. No loud announcements. She'd smile, make conversation, then disappear into her work. People assumed she was just getting by. Years later, I learned she had built a network of contracts that paid her whether she showed up or not. She had engineered freedom through patience. While others were busy being seen, she was busy being solvent. That's what the elite protect. Not just money, but the ability to decide, the ability to say no, the ability to walk away. Here's the second quiet code. Elite people never share how much of their life is designed, not motivated, Designed. Motivation is emotional and temporary. Design is structural and relentless. The elite build systems that make the right choice the easy choice and the wrong choice expensive. They don't rely on willpower at 9 p.m. They rely on a calendar built at 9 a.m. They don't try to eat healthy. They remove the junk from the house. They don't try to focus. They build environments that make distraction awkward. The average person treats their mind like a public park. Anybody can walk in. Any notification can scream. Any opinion can set up a picnic on their attention. The elite treat their mind like a private office with a locked door. They decide who enters. They decide what stays. They decide what gets time. One of the biggest lies in American culture is that freedom means doing what you want. The elite understand the truth. Freedom means doing what you said you would do. Freedom means your word means something even when nobody is watching, especially when nobody is watching. So what do they do that they don't talk about? They practice boredom on purpose. They practice being misunderstood. They practice saying no without a speech. They practice going home early. They practice not responding right away. They practice not needing to prove themselves. A man in Chicago built a career in finance, then quietly transitioned into owning pieces of businesses. He didn't brag about it. He didn't teach it online. He didn't post screenshots. When people asked, he'd shrug and say he was working. What he was really doing was protecting his focus from the market of attention. He knew that public ambition attracts public debate. People want to critique what they can see, and critique is one more drain. The elite know something else that almost nobody wants to admit. Most people around you are not rooting for your growth. They're rooting for your predictability. They like you as long as your success doesn't force them to question their choices. They don't consciously think this. They don't wake up and decide to sabotage you, but their comfort will fight your change. And if you overshare your plans, you hand them a weapon, their doubt, their jokes, their concern, their advice that sounds supportive but secretly means don't outgrow us. That's why elite people share outcomes, not intentions. They let results do the talking. They let distance do the protecting. Now there's a hard edge to this, because if you want to rise, you need to accept the price. You will become less relatable to people who stay the same. You will be called obsessed. You will be called selfish. You will be told you're doing too much. That's often a compliment in disguise. The elite never share how often they've had to disappoint someone to honor themselves. They never post the nights they chose sleep over the party. They never brag about the weekends they didn't waste. They never announce the conversations they refuse to have. They just keep moving. If you're listening to this and thinking, I'm not elite, good. That thought can be useful if it turns into hunger instead of resignation. Elite isn't a title. Elite is a set of habits practiced longer than most people can tolerate. Elite is a decision made daily. So here are actions you can take without making a big show of it. First, start building a private routine that nobody gets to vote on. Pick one discipline and make it non-negotiable for 30 days. Not 5 disciplines. 1. If it's fitness, then it's a daily training appointment even if it's short. If it's money, then it's a daily 10-minute financial check-in and one weekly decision that reduces waste. If it's skill, then it's daily practice before entertainment. Second, stop announcing your goals to people who haven't earned the right to hear them. Earned means they have proof in their own life that they respect discipline. Earned means they won't turn your ambition into a group discussion. You don't need a crowd. You need a code. Third, clean up your attention. This isn't about being a monk. This is about being intentional. If your phone is the first thing you touch in the morning, you're starting your day as a consumer. Elite people start their day as owners. Owners decide, consumers react. Put 10 minutes between waking up and exposure to the world. Drink water, write down what matters, move your body, then enter the noise. Fourth, create one boundary that makes you uncomfortable, something simple. Don't respond immediately. Don't explain your no. Don't rescue someone from the consequences of their choices. Don't join conversations that drain you. Watch what happens when you stop leaking yourself. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. There's a reason the elite seem calm. It's not because they're lucky. It's because they've stopped negotiating with chaos. They accept that their feelings will change, but their standards will not. They accept that some days will be heavy, but the work is still the work. They accept that nobody is coming to save them, so they build a life that doesn't require saving. And they never share how much of their confidence is actually practiced. People think confidence is something you either have or you don't. The elite know confidence is a byproduct. It comes from evidence. Evidence comes from keeping promises. Keeping promises comes from doing the work when it's boring and when it's hard. That's the cycle. That's the quiet code. You can start today by becoming harder to distract and easier to rely on. You can start today by choosing one standard and living it in private. You can start today by refusing to trade your future for comfort disguised as social approval. The world is full of people who want your attention and your energy. The elite don't hate those people. They just don't rent them space in their mind. They keep their plan private and their discipline public to themselves. So ask yourself, as you move into the next chapter, where are you leaking your power? Who has access to your goals without earning it? What would change if you stopped performing progress and started practicing it? And if you became silent about your intentions, what kind of results would you be forced to produce to speak for you? Chapter 2. The price tag nobody posts. In the last chapter, you heard the quiet code. Elite people stop leaking their power, stop performing progress, and start living by private standards that don't need applause. They don't build their lives on motivation. They build them on design, boundaries, and evidence. That silence isn't shyness. It's protection. What elite people never share next is even more important because it's the part that exposes the real engine behind the results. They never share the true price tag, not the money, the trade-offs. Most people want the lifestyle without the ledger. They want the highlight without the hidden invoice. But every serious life has a cost, and elite people pay it early on purpose in ways that look boring to outsiders. They don't brag about it because it's not impressive in conversation. It's impressive in outcomes. Picture two people leaving the same office building at 6 p.m. One heads to happy hour because the group is going and it feels harmless. The other heads home, eats quickly, and spends 90 minutes building a skill that will change their income a year from now. There is nothing dramatic about that second decision. No cheering. No instant reward. Just a quiet deposit into a future most people can't see. That's the difference. The elite can tolerate delayed validation. They are willing to be underestimated while they're compounding. America is a country that celebrates visible effort. If you look exhausted, people assume you're important. If you're always busy, people assume you're winning. Elite people rarely fall for that trap. They work hard, but they don't worship burnout. They don't wear stress like a badge. They understand something the culture forgets. Being busy can be a way to avoid being effective. You can sprint in circles and call it ambition. So what's the real price tag? It starts with opportunity cost, the thing almost nobody respects. Every yes is a no to something else. Every commitment has a shadow. Every time you scroll, you're voting against your future. Every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," you're paying interest on procrastination. There's a man I heard about in the Midwest who wanted to get out of a job that was slowly shrinking him. Not a bad job, just a job that promised comfort and delivered numbness. He wasn't broke, but he was stuck. He didn't announce a new chapter. He didn't post a countdown. He took a second shift 3 nights a week delivering packages. With that money, he bought time. He paid off the car. He cut expenses. He built a small emergency fund. Then, with the pressure reduced, he started taking night classes and learning a skill that could travel anywhere. That wasn't glamorous. It was humbling. It was tiring. And it worked. Elite people never share how often their confidence is built on humility. Not the cute kind. The uncomfortable kind. The kind where you do what you have to do without needing it to look cool. The kind where you accept that your pride is too expensive. Another thing they don't share is how many fun things they skipped. You might think the elite have more fun because they have more resources. Later, sure. But early on, the fun is often traded. Not because they hate joy, but because they understand timing. There is a season to build and a season to enjoy what you built. Most people reverse it. They spend their best building years chasing comfort, then spend their later years chasing stability. The elite flip it. They build when it's inconvenient, so comfort becomes optional later. This is where people get confused. They see someone successful at 35 and assume that person had a special advantage. Sometimes they did. Often they didn't. Often they just paid a price the observer refused to pay. They went to bed early when others stayed out. They trained when nobody watched. They studied when others relaxed. They turned down invitations not because they were better, but because they were serious. Elite people also don't share the emotional cost of outgrowing rooms. That's not a motivational quote. That's a real experience. You will feel friction when your standards rise. You will feel lonely when your habits change. You will feel a strange guilt when you stop being available for everyone's chaos. And here's what the elite know. Guilt is not always a signal you did something wrong. Sometimes guilt is just the sound of an old identity dying. There's a reason this topic matters in the USA. We're raised on the idea that you should be likable, agreeable, connected, always on. We're taught to keep the vibe good. But elite people don't worship vibes. They worship values. They will disappoint someone to protect their purpose. They don't make a speech about it. They just don't show up to the things that don't align. The price tag also includes repetition. This is the part people hate. The same workout again. The same sales calls again. The same practice again. The same reading again. The same saving again. Repetition without novelty is where most people quit because they confuse excitement with progress. Elite people understand that boredom is a gatekeeper. If you can stay consistent when the dopamine dries up, you separate yourself. Think of a Navy SEAL candidate running in the dark, cold sand grinding into their skin. It's not the moment that makes them. It's the willingness to keep going when the mind starts negotiating. You don't need to be in the military to learn the lesson. Your version might be waking up early to train when the bed feels warm. Your version might be sitting down to do the work when nobody will clap. Your version might be turning down the extra drink because you refuse to wake up foggy again. It's the same muscle, the ability to choose your standard over your mood. Elite people never share the invisible structure behind their choices. The public sees discipline as a personality trait. The elite treat discipline like logistics. They set up their week so fewer decisions are needed. They decide in advance what gets priority and what gets cut. They protect mornings, or they protect evenings, or they protect a specific block of time like it's an appointment with their future. They don't leave it to chance. Here's a practical shift you can make without changing your entire life overnight. Start using the concept of a non-negotiable window. Pick one 90-minute block 3 to 5 days a week where you do the thing that upgrades your life. Not errands, not maintenance, upgrade work, skill, fitness, building, creating, selling, studying, producing. Then treat that window as sacred. You don't move it for casual plans. You don't trade it for scrolling. You don't apologize for it. You just do it. Next, audit your spending and your energy like an adult who respects their own future. A lot of people in this country make enough money to move forward but stay stuck because their money is bleeding out through small comforts that add up. The elite don't necessarily live like minimalists. They just make sure their money is serving a plan. If you can't see where your money goes, your money controls you. If you can't see where your time goes, your time controls you. Another quiet truth: elite people don't share how often they choose discomfort on purpose. They choose the conversation they'd rather avoid. They choose the workout they don't feel like doing. They choose the extra rep. They choose the extra draft. They choose the extra call. Not because they're machines, but because they have trained themselves to respect the long game. And they don't share how often they walk away from good opportunities to protect great ones. This is maturity. The average person says yes because they're afraid of missing out. The elite say no because they're afraid of missing their own potential. They know the biggest threat isn't failure. The biggest threat is success at the wrong thing. There's a story you'll recognize in some form. Someone gets a promotion, a new title, more money, more status. But the promotion drags them away from the skill they were building, the health they were improving, the family they were reconnecting with. Suddenly their life looks better on paper and feels worse in the mirror. Elite people notice that trap early. They make decisions based on alignment, not applause. So here's the hard, direct question your life will eventually force you to answer. What are you willing to give up to become who you say you want to be? Because you will give up something either way. If you don't choose your sacrifices, life will choose them for you. And life doesn't negotiate. As you absorb this, don't romanticize it. Don't turn it into drama. The point is not to become severe and joyless. The point is to become intentional. You can have a good life, a connected life, a joyful life, and still respect your standards. But you will need to stop paying for comfort with your future. Near the end of every serious transformation, there's a moment where you realize nobody is coming with a parade. You look around and the world is still noisy, people are still distracted, and the only thing that changed is you. That's the moment the elite quietly win. They don't need the parade, they needed the proof. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Now let it land. What comfort are you paying for with your future right now? What small habit is quietly taxing your energy every day? If you had to choose one non-negotiable window this week to upgrade your life, what would it be, and what would you stop doing to protect it? And if your results were the receipt of your choices, what would that receipt reveal about what you truly value? Chapter 3. The inner circle filter. You've already learned that elite people protect their power by staying quiet, and they pay a real price through trade-offs most people refuse to make. They don't chase applause, and they don't pretend the path is free. They design their days, guard their attention, and accept discomfort as tuition. Now comes the part they almost never talk about because it sounds cold until you understand it. Elite people are ruthless about access. Not access to their money or their status, but access to their mind, their time, and their momentum. They know their future can be decided by the people closest to them, and they treat that like a serious risk management problem. Most people pick relationships the way they pick snacks. Whatever is nearby, whatever feels good in the moment, whatever is familiar. Elite people pick relationships the way they pick investments. They don't just ask, "Do I like this person?" They ask, "Does this person increase or decrease my standards over time?" Because standards are contagious. So is chaos. Think about what happens when you spend time with someone who's disciplined. You start standing up straighter without realizing it. Your excuses sound weaker in your own ears. You feel the urge to match the energy. That's not magic. That's influence. Now flip it. Spend time with someone who complains constantly, blames everything, and lives in a fog of drama. You'll notice your mind gets heavier. Your focus fractures. You start negotiating with your own goals. Not because you're weak, but because environment is stronger than intention when repeated often enough. Elite people never share how much of their success is simply the result of not being surrounded by friction. They didn't win because they discovered some secret trick. They won because they stopped letting emotional turbulence live rent-free in their week. Here's a real-world example you'll recognize in American life. A young guy starts making progress at work. He gets serious. He starts showing up early, learning new tools, taking initiative. His friends notice. At first they joke. "Look at you, Mr. Corporate." He laughs. Then he stops coming out late because he's training in the mornings. The jokes sharpen. "You think you're better than us now." He's not trying to be better, he's trying to be different, but in a lot of circles, different feels like betrayal. Most people fold right there. They trade their future for belonging. Elite people don't. They don't necessarily cut everyone off dramatically. They just change the ratio. They spend less time where they shrink and more time where they stretch. They stop making their ambition a group project. They also understand something about the USA that almost nobody says out loud. A lot of people confuse friendship with access. They think knowing you means owning a piece of your time. Elite people don't let that confusion survive. They create clear lanes. They are warm without being available. They are kind without being porous. This isn't about being antisocial. It's about being intentional with your bandwidth. You can love people and still refuse to let them steer your life. You can be loyal and still have boundaries. You can be generous and still protect your momentum. Elite people never share the rules they use to filter their inner circle because those rules sound harsh to people who want unlimited access. But the rules are simple when you strip away the emotion. Do you respect my time? Do you respect my standards? Do you bring solutions more than problems? Do you take responsibility for your own life? Do you keep your word? Do you handle hard conversations like an adult? A woman building a business in Dallas once told someone close to her calmly that she couldn't do long phone calls during the week anymore. The other person acted wounded, accused her of changing. She didn't argue, she didn't over-explain. She offered a lane, weekends, or a short check-in. That's what elite people do. They don't negotiate with guilt. They create structure. If someone can't respect the structure, they don't get the same access. Most people think elite people have better connections. That's partly true. But the deeper truth is elite people honor trust like a currency. They pay attention to what people do, not what people say. In business, in friendships, in dating, in family, they keep a quiet record, not a petty record, a practical one. Did this person show up? Did they follow through? Did they keep my confidence? Did they add stability or volatility? And here's the part they never share because it exposes the whole game. They don't need a big circle. They need a clean circle. They need a circle that doesn't contaminate their standards. If you want to understand this, picture a high-performance engine. It doesn't run on random fuel. It runs on specific fuel. Put the wrong fuel in and the engine knocks. It still moves, but it damages itself over time. That's what the wrong inner circle does. You might still function, but you'll lose power. Elite people are also selective about who gets their vulnerability. They don't tell everyone their fears, doubts, or plans, not because they're fake, because they understand that not everyone deserves the weight of your real life. Some people will mishandle it. They'll minimize it, gossip about it, judge it, or use it to keep you small. Elite people keep sensitive information inside a tight container. They share with mentors, equals, and proven allies, not with spectators. There's a reason this matters so much in a culture as loud as ours. In the USA, everybody has an opinion and they'll hand it to you like it's helpful. But unsolicited opinions are often disguised insecurity. Elite people don't argue with it. They don't try to convince people. They keep moving and let outcomes settle debates. So how do you apply this without becoming bitter or isolated? You start by recognizing lanes. There are people you enjoy. There are people you grow with. There are people you learn from. There are people you love but limit. And there are people you must distance from to protect your future. The mistake most people make is expecting one person to be all of those things. Elite people don't. They don't force everyone into the same level of access. They assign lanes. A practical action you can take is to tighten your calendar around your standards. If you keep open time, it will get filled by other people's needs. If you don't protect your prime hours, the world will rent them. Decide in advance which hours are yours for health, skill, and building. Then decide who gets what version of you outside those hours, not because you're selfish, but because you're serious. Another action is to build one relationship that raises your standard, not a fan relationship, a real one, someone who lives the kind of discipline you respect. This isn't about networking events and handshakes. This is about proximity to excellence. The simplest way is to become useful, show up with value, be reliable, follow through. Elite people don't get impressed by charm. They get impressed by consistency. And if you don't have access to those people yet, start by becoming the type of person they don't have to worry about. Become the type of person who makes things easier, not harder. The type of person who doesn't need constant validation. The type of person who can handle direct feedback without collapsing. That's how you earn a seat near high standards. Now let's deal with the hardest version of this, family and old friends. You may not be able to avoid them completely, and you don't need to, but you can stop letting them shape your identity. You can stop seeking their approval. You can stop giving them the microphone in your head. Elite people often love their family deeply while refusing to inherit their limitations. That takes discipline, because your brain wants familiar. Your brain wants acceptance. Your brain wants the easy comfort of being the person people expect. But your future requires you to become the person your goals demand. There's a quiet moment in every serious rise where you realize you can't drag everyone with you. That's not cruelty, that's reality. Some people will join you later when they see it's possible. Some will never join, and if you keep stopping to persuade them, you'll never arrive. The inner circle filter isn't a tactic, it's a lifestyle. It's choosing peace over noise. Alignment over approval. Standards over popularity. Near the end of the chapter, I want you to hear this clearly. Your environment will either feed your discipline or feed your excuses. There is no neutral. Every conversation, every group chat, every weekend pattern is training you to become someone. The question is whether you like who it's training you to be. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So take a breath and be honest with yourself. Who has access to you that hasn't earned it? Where are you tolerating disrespect disguised as that's just how they are? If your calendar is a mirror, what does it reveal about who you prioritize and who you become around them? And if you chose one relationship to strengthen and one relationship to limit starting this week, which choices would most protect the future you say you want? Chapter 4. The scorecard hide. You've already heard how elite people protect their power by staying quiet, how they pay the price through hard trade-offs, and how they filter access so their standards don't get contaminated. They don't build their lives on applause, comfort, or unlimited availability. They build on design, boundaries, and a clean circle that supports momentum. Now comes the tool they rely on constantly, yet almost never talk about in public because it ruins the fantasy. Elite people keep a private scorecard. They measure what matters. They track what moves the needle. And they're brutally honest with themselves when the numbers don't match the story. Most people live off vibes. They wake up and guess. They work and hope. They say they're trying and staying consistent without proof. Their self-image is built on intention. Elite people don't gamble their future on intention. They build evidence. They look at the scoreboard, not the crowd. Think of a winning football program. The fans see game day. The team lives in film. The crowd watches touchdowns. The staff watches footwork, timing, missed assignments, patterns that repeat under pressure. The team that wins long-term isn't the team that screams the loudest. It's the team that corrects the smallest mistakes before they become big losses. Elite people never share how boring their improvement process really is. It's not a burst of motivation. It's a routine of review. They run their life like a serious operation. They don't wait for a dramatic wake-up call. They catch the leak on Tuesday and fix it before the weekend breaks them. This is what separates the people who get lucky once from the people who stay winning. Staying winning requires ruthless feedback. In the USA, we're taught to believe in ourselves, speak positively, and manifest a better reality. Belief matters, but belief without reality checks turns into delusion with good branding. Elite people believe in themselves and interrogate themselves. They are optimistic about what's possible and merciless about what's true. Here's what they don't share. They don't just set goals, they set metrics. They don't just say, I want to be healthier. They track training sessions completed, daily steps, weekly meal prep, sleep hours, resting heart rate, performance numbers. They don't just say, I want more money. They track revenue, savings rate, spending categories, hours on income-producing work, outreach attempts, close rates, skills learned. They don't just say, I want a better relationship. They track behaviors. Time together without screens, hard conversations handled cleanly, promises kept, emotional reactivity reduced, effort shown consistently. They measure the inputs that create outcomes, and they keep the scorecard private because most people can't handle it. A private scorecard forces you to stop making excuses. It exposes your patterns. It makes you responsible. A guy building a sales career in Phoenix kept a simple notebook that nobody ever saw. Every day he logged calls made, follow-ups completed, appointments set, deals closed, and the reason each deal died. At the end of the week he didn't say, I had a rough week. He said, I made fewer attempts on Tuesday and I rushed my pitch on Thursday. He fixed what was fixable. Meanwhile, other people in his office blamed the economy, blamed the leads, blamed the season. He wasn't smarter. He was accountable. And accountability, practiced daily, becomes a superpower. Elite people never share how often they tell themselves no, not as punishment, as alignment. Their scorecard isn't there to shame them, it's there to steer them. There's a kind of pain that makes you better, and there's a kind of pain that makes you bitter. The difference is whether you learn. Elite people use measurement to learn fast. They also use it to protect their identity. Most people let one bad week define them. They spiral. They say, I'm off track, and turn that into a personality. Elite people have a different mindset. They say, the numbers dipped. Why? Then they adjust. They don't become the story, they become the solution. Here's another thing they don't share. Elite people don't trust their memory when emotions are involved. They trust records because memory is biased. When you're tired, you remember your effort as bigger than it was. When you're guilty, you remember your mistakes as worse than they were. When you're proud, you forget the help you got. Elite people don't leave their life in the hands of a biased narrator. They write it down. That's why they debrief, quietly, consistently. After a tough meeting, they ask themselves what they could have done better. After a big win, they ask what factors actually caused it so they can repeat it. After a conflict, they ask what triggered them and what boundary was missing. After a productive week, they ask what structure made it possible. This is not overthinking. This is ownership. Most people avoid debriefing because it forces truth. Truth can sting, but truth also sets you free. If you want to start living this way, you don't need a fancy app. You need a simple, disciplined ritual. Once per day, capture the essentials. What did I do that moved my life forward today? What did I do that pulled me backward? What is the one adjustment I make tomorrow? Then once per week, do a longer review. Look at your calendar. Look at your spending. Look at your training. Look at your output. Don't argue with it. Don't defend it. Read it like a coach reading game film. And here's the part people don't expect. You can do this without becoming harsh. You can be proud of effort and still demand better. The elite balance confidence and correction. They praise what works and confront what doesn't. They also keep the scorecard focused. Most people track too much and then quit. Elite people track the few things that drive the many things. If you're trying to improve health, track workouts completed and sleep. If you're trying to improve income, track outreach and skill practice. If you're trying to improve focus, track deep work hours and screen time. If you're trying to improve your character, track promises kept and emotional blow-ups avoided. The point isn't perfect data. The point is clarity. There's another quiet advantage they never share. Elite people don't just measure results. They measure standards. They measure whether they live the way they said they would live. That's identity-based. That's deeper than goals. A college athlete trying to go pro might have a bad game. The elite version of that athlete doesn't panic. He looks at the standard. Did I prepare the right way? Did I sleep? Did I eat? Did I study? Did I execute the fundamentals? If the standard was met but the outcome wasn't, he stays steady and repeats. If the standard wasn't met, he corrects immediately. That's how you build stability in a world that changes. Most people want confidence without standards. Elite people want standards that produce confidence. Now let's address what stops most people, the fear of seeing the truth. If you measure your life, you might find out you're not as consistent as you tell yourself. Good. That's not an insult, that's a starting point. You can't fix what you refuse to face. The scorecard is not a weapon, it's a compass. And once you have a compass, you stop drifting. You stop being surprised by the same problems. You stop acting like your life is happening to you. This also changes how you handle setbacks. Elite people don't turn setbacks into identity. They turn setbacks into data. They ask, what did this teach me? Then they apply the lesson fast. The speed of learning becomes the speed of rising. Here's a simple rule you can live by starting today. Don't trust a feeling about your progress. Verify it. If you feel like you're working hard, check your output. If you feel like you're saving money, check your spending. If you feel like you're focusing, check your screen time. If you feel like you're improving, check the reps. Then adjust based on reality, not emotion. That's the hidden discipline. That's the private scorecard. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So as you step forward, decide what you will measure and what you will stop pretending about. What would change if you kept a private scorecard for the next 30 days and let the numbers tell the truth? Which input, if you tracked it daily, would force your life to improve? And if your calendar and your habits were the only evidence allowed in court, what would they prove about who you are becoming? Chapter 5. The Unseen War with the Self. By now you've felt the pattern. Elite people stay quiet to protect their power. They pay the real price through trade-offs. They filter access to keep their standards clean. And they keep a private scorecard so reality, not emotion, drives their decisions. They don't drift. They don't perform progress. They don't let chaos vote on their future. What they almost never share next is the hardest truth because it's the most personal. The real opponent isn't the market, the competition, the system, or your past. The real opponent is the version of you that keeps trying to negotiate your standards down to match your comfort. Most people lose their future in tiny private moments, not in public disasters. In the morning when the alarm goes off and the mind starts bargaining. In the afternoon slump when distraction feels like relief. In the evening when the body wants easy dopamine and the brain says, "You earned it." Elite people don't pretend they're above that voice. They just don't obey it. They never share how often they feel the same resistance you feel. They feel it and move anyway. That's the difference. Not talent, not luck. The ability to act without being in the mood. There's a construction foreman in a small town outside Nashville who became the most reliable guy on every job site. He wasn't the strongest or the smartest, but he had a rule. He never showed up unprepared. He checked the plans, he prepped the tools, he was early, he was steady. Other guys had energy sometimes and excuses other times. He was the same every time. Over years, that steadiness turned into trust, and that trust turned into more control over which jobs he took, and that control turned into better money, better hours, and a better life. People called him lucky. He didn't correct them. He didn't need to. His life was built on a private agreement he kept with himself. Elite people never share the real source of their consistency, identity, discipline. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on self-respect that's been trained. They don't ask, "What do I feel like doing?" They ask, "What does the person I'm becoming do next?" That question sounds simple, but it changes everything. It moves you from chasing outcomes to enforcing identity. And identity is what lasts when excitement fades. Here's what most people don't realize. The brain is designed to protect you, not elevate you. It wants safety, comfort, predictability, and social acceptance. It will whisper reasonable-sounding arguments for staying the same. It will dress fear in logic. It will call procrastination research. It will call avoidance being patient. It will call quitting being realistic. Elite people have learned to recognize those disguises. They don't fight themselves with hate. They fight themselves with clarity. They also don't try to win every day with heroic effort. They win with rules. Rules reduce negotiation. The more you negotiate, the more you lose. A woman building a career in a high-pressure hospital in Boston had a simple rule for her health. She trained right after work before she went home. Not because she always felt like it, but because she knew if she went home first, comfort would win. She didn't talk about it. She didn't announce it. She didn't make it a personality. She just protected the sequence. That sequence saved her from the common trap of promising yourself you'll do it later and then running out of willpower. Elite people never share how much their success comes from sequencing. They place the important actions before the seductive actions. They front-load the day with discipline so the rest of the day doesn't steal it. They also understand the concept of emotional taxation. Some people drain you with drama. Some habits drain you with regret. Some environments drain you with noise. The elite don't just manage time. They manage emotional energy. Because you can have free time and still feel exhausted if your mind is full of friction. This is why they learn to sit in discomfort without running. They can feel anxious and still do the work. They can feel uncertain and still take the call. They can feel embarrassed and still practice. They can feel behind and still execute. Most people interpret discomfort as a stop sign. Elite people interpret discomfort as a sign they're at the edge of growth. There's a young entrepreneur in Miami who spent years bouncing from idea to idea, always starting, rarely finishing. He was talented, charismatic, always working on something. One day he noticed a brutal truth in his private scorecard. He avoided the boring parts. He loved the beginning and hated the middle. He loved brainstorming and hated shipping. So he changed his identity from creative to finisher. He started asking one question every morning. What is the one thing I will complete today, even if it's uncomfortable? He didn't add more hours. He added closure. Within a year, he had a business that actually functioned instead of a collection of exciting attempts. Elite people never share how often the breakthrough is not doing more, but finishing more. Now let's get direct about what's really going on inside you when you slip. It's not because you're lazy. It's because you're loyal to the current version of you. That version has habits, comfort zones, and predictable patterns. Change feels like a betrayal of the old self. Your brain will pull you back to familiar ground. That's why so many people get motivated, start strong, then disappear. They didn't build a bridge between who they were and who they're trying to become. They tried to teleport. Elite people build bridges. They take small actions that prove the new identity is real. They stack evidence. They keep promises. They repeat. Then the new identity becomes normal. You can do this without drama. You can do it quietly. Pick one standard that defines the person you want to be and enforce it for 30 days, not a wish. A standard, something that creates evidence. It could be training a certain number of days, writing a certain number of pages, making a certain number of outreach attempts, saving a specific amount weekly, sleeping at a consistent time. The point is not perfection. The point is proof. Then you build a rule for your worst moments, not your best moments. Anybody can be disciplined when they feel good. Elite people are disciplined when they feel tired, irritated, bored, and tempted. They pre-decide what happens when their mood drops. That's how they stop their feelings from driving the car. A simple example: if you don't feel like training, you still show up and do the warm-up. That's the rule. You don't decide whether you train. You decide how hard you go after you start. Most of the time, starting breaks the resistance. Even if you do the minimum, you preserve the identity. You stayed in the game. Elite people never share how often they win by staying in the game on bad days. They also learn to stop trusting the urge for immediate relief. Relief feels good now and expensive later. Discipline feels costly now and pays later. Most people keep choosing relief and then wonder why life feels heavy. The elite choose discipline and wonder why life feels lighter. It's because discipline removes future stress. It pays down anxiety by creating capability. This is also why they handle failure differently. They don't turn failure into a verdict. They treat it like feedback. If they slip, they don't spiral into shame and quit. They return to the standard quickly. They don't make the mistake bigger by adding a story to it. They correct and continue. Here's a mindset shift that will change your year if you take it seriously. Stop asking for a life that's easier. Ask to become a person who is stronger. Easier isn't stable. Stronger is stable. The economy changes, people change, seasons change, your mood changes, but your standards can stay. Elite people never share that their peace comes from standards, not circumstances. And it's not cold, it's not robotic, it's actually freeing. When you live by standards, you stop needing constant reassurance. You stop chasing approval. You stop being whipped around by feelings. You become reliable to yourself. That reliability becomes confidence. That confidence becomes calm. That calm becomes power. You don't need a new personality to do this. You need a new contract with yourself. Quiet, clear, non-negotiable. Now think about your own life. Where do you keep negotiating? Where do you keep giving yourself loopholes? Where do you keep saying, this time doesn't count? Elite people don't do that. They don't need to be perfect. They need to be honest. And honesty is a discipline. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So let it settle in your chest. What private negotiation keeps stealing your momentum? What rule could you set that would eliminate that negotiation starting today? If you stopped chasing motivation and started enforcing identity, what would you do differently this week in the moments nobody sees? And if the strongest version of you could speak for 60 seconds into your current life, what standard would they demand you stop compromising? Chapter 6. The final seal. You've walked through the quiet code, the real price tag, the inner circle filter, the private scorecard, and the unseen war with the self. You've seen that elite people don't win by being louder, busier, or more popular. They win by protecting their attention, paying the right costs, controlling access, measuring the truth, and enforcing identity when nobody is watching. Now it all comes down to a final seal, the part they almost never share because it's not a trick you can copy. It's a decision you have to make. Elite people don't leave their life open-ended. They commit to a standard so deeply that it becomes a line they do not cross, even when they could get away with it, especially when they could get away with it. This is where the world tries to bargain with you. It tells you to be flexible when what it really means is to be soft. It tells you to treat yourself when what it really means is to abandon yourself. It tells you nobody will notice when what it really means is your future will notice. The elite know that the most dangerous moments aren't the dramatic ones. The most dangerous moments are the quiet ones where you are alone with a choice, and your character is the only witness. That's what the final seal is, character as a system. There's a story that plays out in different forms across the country. A business owner is offered an easy shortcut, a little under-the-table move, a gray area decision that boosts profit now and risks reputation later. Nobody would know. The temptation is real because the reward is immediate. Elite people don't talk about how often they're tempted. They don't pretend they're above it. They just have a line. They have rules that protect the long game. They choose the slower money, the cleaner money, the money they can sleep with. They know that success that costs your self-respect is a bad deal. A young athlete is offered a way to cut corners, to look stronger, to recover faster, to keep up with competitors. Nobody is watching, and the pressure is heavy. Elite people don't talk about the pressure. They talk about the work. They choose the path that lets them look in the mirror without flinching. They understand that the body is temporary, but integrity is a lifetime asset. A couple is struggling, and one person has the chance to escape into attention from someone else. A message that feels good, a flirtation that feels exciting, an excuse that feels convenient. Elite people don't talk about this either. They don't broadcast their loyalty. They practice it. They remember that the life they want is built by choices that protect what matters, not impulses that feed the moment. The final seal is what happens when you stop asking, "Can I?" and start asking, "Who am I?" Elite people never share how often they're simply protecting their future from their present self. They know the present self will chase comfort, ego, validation, and shortcuts. The future self needs structure, discipline, and clean decisions. The elite don't wait until they feel like being the future self. They act like them now, and they don't do it in public. They do it in private. So here is what ties every chapter together. Silence protects your power. Trade-offs purchase your freedom. Filters protect your standards. A scorecard forces truth. Identity discipline defeats mood. But none of that matters if you don't seal it with a commitment that holds under pressure. The final seal is simple, but it's not easy. You decide what you stand for, and then you live like it's real. Most people avoid this because it sounds rigid, but rigidity isn't the point. The point is reliability. Your life becomes powerful when your word becomes dependable, not to other people first, to you first. The reason elite people are calm in chaos is because they've made fewer decisions negotiable. They've removed options that lead them backward. They've built defaults that move them forward. They don't have to debate themselves every day because the debate was settled by a standard. This is why they can move fast. They aren't carrying the drag of constant self-betrayal. They aren't rebuilding confidence every Monday after destroying it every weekend. They aren't apologizing to themselves in the mirror. They're stacking days they can respect. And that respect is the real currency. In America, you can be surrounded by opportunity and still feel trapped if you can't trust yourself. You can have talent and still lose if you can't focus. You can have intelligence and still fall apart if you can't handle discomfort. Elite people understand that the main advantage isn't resources. It's self-leadership. Self-leadership is what makes resources useful. So what does the final seal look like in real life? It looks like a morning that starts the same way most days because you decided your body and mind are your responsibility. It looks like work blocks that are protected because you decided your future deserves your best hours. It looks like conversations you don't entertain because you decided your peace matters. It looks like money that is directed, not drifted, because you decided to stop being casual with your freedom. It looks like relationships that are chosen and maintained with intention, because you decided your circle will not lower your standards. It looks like a private scorecard that tells the truth because you decided you'd rather face reality than live in fantasy. It looks like a rule that holds even when you're tired because you decided your identity is not up for debate. That is what elite people never share. They are not built by one big moment. They are built by 1,000 small moments sealed by one decision. Now, listen carefully because this is the turning point. If you take what you've heard and turn it into entertainment, nothing changes. If you take what you've heard and turn it into a contract, everything changes. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a clear standard and the courage to keep it when it's inconvenient. A lot of people want to feel inspired. Elite people want to feel aligned. Inspiration is a spark. Alignment is a furnace. You're not here to collect ideas. You're here to become someone. And becoming someone is not passive. It is chosen. So here is your call to action, direct and disciplined. Seal this with one commitment that touches every part of your life. One rule that your future self would thank you for. One non-negotiable window you protect. One boundary you enforce. One metric you track. One relationship you strengthen. One habit you cut. One standard you raise, then you live it quietly until it becomes normal, because the world does not reward potential, it rewards proof. And proof is built when nobody is clapping. There will be days you don't feel powerful. That's fine. Power isn't a mood, it's a pattern. Keep the pattern. There will be days you feel behind. That's fine. Behind is not a life sentence, it's a moment. Keep moving. There will be days you feel tempted to explain yourself, to announce your plans, to seek approval, to loosen your standards. That's fine. Let that temptation pass like weather. Then return to the code, silence, trade-offs, filters, scorecard, identity, seal. That's the chain. And chains are only strong if every link holds. If you're ready for a different life, stop waiting for a different feeling. Start enforcing a different standard. You don't need permission. You don't need a perfect environment. You need the courage to be consistent long enough for your life to recognize you. And one day, sooner than you think if you stay disciplined, You'll look back and realize the elite weren't born on a higher level. They just stopped negotiating with the version of themselves that kept settling. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Now take this into your real life, not your imagination. What standard are you willing to seal today that you will not cross tomorrow? What part of your life has been drifting because you've been living on feelings instead of rules? Who needs less access to you so your future can breathe? And who deserves more of your commitment because they raise your standards? What would your private scorecard say after 30 days of ruthless honesty? And what would it say after a year of quiet discipline? And if you could only be remembered for one thing by the person you become, what decision are you going to make right now that proves you meant every word?